Well, hello and welcome to our Organizer 411 event today. I'm John Hunt from SME.com. A little under the weather today with my voice not quite making it, but I'm not going to do much talking today because we have an incredible panel of top professional organizers who are going to take your questions live today. And so what I want you to do before we introduce them is just go ahead in the chat box that we have on the side there. Go ahead and enter your questions. We'll be taking those live as well as any that have been pre-submitted, and we'll get to as many as we can. We're going to be here for an hour, so get them in early, and we will try to get that as many answered as possible. Going to introduce our panel today. First of all, Kim Oser, needanotherU.com. Kim, how are you today? And tell us a little bit about where you're located and your business.
Hey, John. Apparently I'm doing better than you are today, and I am in the Washington, D.C. area, and it is currently raining, which means it's not snowing, so we are very happy about that. We've had our share this year. And I am the owner of needanotherU.com, and I have a professional organizing business as well as productivity training and tech consulting. So I'm a certified professional organizer. I've been doing this 11 years now. And I also do speaking on the topics of organizing and productivity internationally.
Awesome. So, well, at least you're not in Boston where they had 100 feet of snow this year. So Washington, D.C. is not that bad. But
no.
We'll move on to the other side of the country to Lisa Montanaro from lisamontanaro.com on the West Coast. Lisa, tell us about your business and where you're located and the kinds of things you do.
Absolutely. Good morning. Well, at least it's morning here. So I'm now located in sunny Davis, California. I have been here for about 2.5 years, but I'm from New York, so I can absolutely remember what it's like to be buried in snow. So my sympathy. I have been in business now for 13 years. I am an attorney who jumped ship and defected from the practice of law in 2002, and I did start as a professional organizer, and I am a certified professional organizer. But now I mostly focus on productivity consulting for organizations and for individuals, and I do a lot of professional speaking around the country and the world. And like Kim, I also do international work because with things like Google Hangouts and Skype, it's just so easy to reach your clients. And I also serve as a business coach to professional organizers around the country and the world. So, yeah, it's wonderful. Absolutely love it and blessed to be doing it.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I would say that she's usually in the West Coast, but you never know with Ramona because she's everywhere. Ramona Creel, RamonaCreel.com. Where are you today? And tell us a little bit about your business.
I am actually on the West Coast today. I'm a full-time RVer, so I could be in many different places at any point in time. But yes, I am on the West Coast. I'm in Los Angeles, enjoying the lovely sun and beautiful weather right now. My business is a little bit different than it used to be. I was in one location. I spent a lot of time working with clients, one-on-one. And now I've kind of shifted my business a little bit more to the virtual organizing and the coaching so that I can work with folks wherever I am in the country at that moment. I do a lot of speaking and writing. I actually have written 2 books, The Professional Organizer's Bible, and then also The A to Z of Getting Organized, which is a picture book for, grown-up picture book for the chaotic and cluttered. And I do a lot of coaching, like Lisa does. I do a lot of coaching of new organizers and veteran organizers who are looking to grow their business. I kind of come from a different background because I'm a social worker, so I'm more from the touchy-feely, get inside of your client's head side of things, but I work a good deal with folks who are trying to improve their own practices as well, and I just absolutely love it. And I love this weather. I am so glad not to be on the East Coast right now, I'll say that.
Okay. Well, we'll let the weather aside because some people are watching this live, and some may be watching this in the middle of summer. So anyway, our overall theme, not that we're limited to this today, is spring cleaning, because we're almost at spring at the time of this recording, and we want to talk about what some of the rituals that people go through when they get ready. I think it's cabin fever, whatever you want to call it, that people do. But we'll start with Kim on this one. Kim, what are the steps to getting ready for spring cleaning? I guess some people just get overwhelmed by the whole fact, but if you're working with a client, how do you get them ready for spring cleaning?
I agree with you that it is a mindset that we've got this term, and I don't know if it's a marketing term or where it ever came from with spring cleaning, but I do agree that it's a mindset. So a lot of people think, oh, it's spring cleaning, I'm going to try to get myself all together now. But I also think that it might be leftover resolutions that just didn't quite happen. And so now people are like, okay, I want to get outside, and I don't want to be stuck inside with my stuff. So I've got to do my spring cleaning so that I can get out and have some free time to enjoy myself. So I think that getting people into the mindset of spring cleaning, number one, is to create rituals and schedule time to do it. And there's certain things that are done for spring cleaning every year, depending on where you live and what type of living situation you're in. So I think that just sort of kind of creating those rituals for spring cleaning, so that there's less unexpected.
Yeah, I understand. Lisa, I'm going to throw this over to you as far as, getting organized to get organized, I guess is kind of what I'm getting at here. What kinds of tips do you have for people to get in the mindset and to, what do they need to have ready to go? And another question to kind of a follow-up on that is a lot of spring cleaning takes more than one day. How do you get motivated to get it done when you know it's probably going to take more than one day?
That's a great question. So in terms of how do you get ready to get ready, I think that you have to think of both the tangible and then the intangible. So one of the first things I do is ask someone to think about, okay, what are all the tangible things and things you could touch in your life that you need to start to think about either decluttering or downsizing or taking out, because you may be putting things away from the winter. So I first think seasonal changes. So I think change is one big thing. And then what are all the changes you need to make around tangible things? So, for example, yesterday I put away all the flannel sheets and all the heavy, heavy linens and took out all the spring ones. So that's just an example of one tangible. Maybe taking everything out of the garage, and don't laugh, I actually clean my garage floor and hose it out and everything, and so that's something I kind of do every year. So I would first think of all the tangible things, and then there's the intangible, which is what Kim was getting at, which is how will my schedule change, how will my resolutions change. So I think the first thing people need to do is map it out. So maybe put a line down the middle of the page and think, what are all the tangible things, and then what are all the intangible, temporal, cognitive things, and start there, and then move on to the plan, and then they can execute the plan. But the second thing you brought up is that this will not happen in one day. I mean, maybe you can do something in one day, like change the linens, but it's probably going to take several weeks. So I think people need to be committed to the change process and not think that they're just going to snap their fingers.
Right. Well, Ramona, I'm going to give you one of these creative questions, which is, if you could only have 3 resources or tools for spring cleaning, what would they be?
Well, I think one of the first tools that I would make sure that all of my clients have are set sort of checklists or to-do lists for different areas of the house, because I think that's a lot of why spring cleaning becomes overwhelming to people, is they feel like they're having to sort of make it up from scratch every year, and you're doing the same stuff over and over again. I mean, let's be honest. So there's no reason you can't have just a preset list of things that you are going to be doing in each area of life for each area of your home, and then that also helps with kind of breaking it down into bite-sized chunks too. So I think the second thing that I would have for my tools would be a little schedule where I can say, okay, today's the day that I'm going to do spring cleaning in the bathroom. Today's the day I'm going to do spring cleaning in the garage. I personally would never ask a client to try and tackle the entire house, in one spring cleaning swoop, because that's just too much. So break it up into, reasonable little segments and attach one to each day. And clearly I am list gal, because the third thing I would have is a list of supplies I needed, or a list where I'm keeping track of things that I need to do, repair, buy. That's the big thing that I think spring cleaning is great for, is you're going through and you're eyeballing your entire life, and you're sort of saying, oh crap, I meant to do that over here and I never got around to it, or that really needs fixed, or I need to replace that. Keep a list with you and be marking those things down as you see them and think of them, and then that way you can tackle them and they're not just floating around in your head, gnawing at you like, oh, I know there was something I needed to do. No, it's right there. I'm going to sit down and do it. So.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, we have a question here from someone who has just started a new business and doesn't know what to keep and what not to keep. So how do you set up a good organizing system if you're just starting up a new business?
So there are a few layers to that, but to make it succinct, one of the first things I do is set a record retention policy for that business. So especially when people are not sure what to keep and for how long. And so in the beginning of a business, I would think about, okay, what are all the business operations? So typical things would be like administrative, marketing, finances, clients. And I would set up the files based on the way that person's brain works, so that they can find the files again and maintain them. Because when we file things, it's really about storage. It's really about retrieval, not storage. So I would help them come up with a record retention policy, like, you know, how long do we want to keep these things, and make sure that they actually write it down, because a lot of people don't write down their record retention policy. And then I would come up with a long-term operations manual for them, so as they're operating the business, they actually can get their hands on everything and know what they need to keep. In today's day and age with our technology, you can have such little paper, it's amazing, but we do probably all see this, all three of us. People still hold on to paper like it's their firstborn. But I would probably also make them friends with a digital scanner and with something online like Dropbox, so that they would feel more confident to not have to keep as much paper from the beginning.
Awesome. Well, Kim, I'm going to give you this question from Wendy. She says, I wear several hats at my job and have tried different ways to organize and somehow separate my jobs. She says, I use color to organize. It's very frustrating because not only do I have ADD, but also OCD. I'm always looking for newer, better ideas. So how can you get someone through that?
So if I understand correctly, she's running two different businesses?
Well, she's got several jobs at her, I guess, one business. That wasn't clear, but I think she says I wear several hats at my job, so I'm assuming it's one business.
Okay. I mean, the color coding for especially with people that have ADD or ADHD is fantastic, and the reason why is if something is out of place, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So if you see that there's an orange folder where the red folders are, you know that the orange folder is in the wrong place. So I would suggest that she stick with color coding, but then to make a color representative of a certain area. So like, let's say that there's permanent records that she would need, some of those like incorporation documents or whatever it might be for her specific business, be a certain color like red, because that would be permanent, and then anything that has to do with financials be green, so that would deal with anything that has to do with money, and so that she utilized the colors not just in a way that's pretty, but in a way that makes sense by category. So if something is out of place, it'll also help her OCD and ADHD, because things will look orderly, which would help the OCD part, but then by the color showing when things are in place or out of place, if something is in the wrong place or something is sitting out that's a color, you can quickly look and see where it belongs.
Awesome. Well, Ramona, I'm going to give you this question. This is from Pat. It says, when mail comes in, I sort bills, separate the bills from the trash mail, but then it also says, what do I do with the things that I need to keep and read later or hold? They don't seem to fit in the important or trash categories. I guess that in-between stuff.
Yay, I'm glad you asked me this one, because this is my favorite thing to teach clients. I love setting up, I call it kind of an action file. Basically one of those open hanging file boxes that you can get where the hanging files stick out of the top of the box and you can see the tabs. And set up a folder in there for every type of action that you take regularly with your paper. So some of the common categories that my clients have are things like to read, to enter into the computer, to discuss with so-and-so, could be a boss or a spouse or something like that, things to file, certainly, bills to pay. You can get into a lot of really detailed categories too, like with a lot of my elderly clients who have numbers of insurance things, we might set up EOBs to reconcile. Or with a small business person, it might be things to enter into QuickBooks. So it just depends. Very, very personal freaking to-do that comes out of that mail. Anything you open up and you look at it, you say, what is the next step that I need to take with this piece of paper? And it goes in that file based on whatever the next to-do is. But there's another trick, because otherwise, if you don't create time to do the to-dos. So I like for my clients to set aside an administrative period, preferably once a week. For some people it could be more often, some people less. But basically you are just going through every single file in that box and you are making sure that all of the to-dos in there get taken care of and nothing's falling through the cracks. Now if you put something in there that has a very specific deadline on it, stick it in your calendar and make an indication of, oh, I need to pay this bill and it's in the to pay file and it's due on the 23rd. But otherwise, if you're going through and emptying this thing once a week, pretty much you're not going to have too many to-dos that linger that long.
That's great advice. A couple of your lines got cut out there, but I think basically we get the gist of that. What's next, the next step thing. Lisa, let's talk about a question from Debbie. It says, I have a home office and craft room. That's kind of an interesting combination. It always seems to be a mess. How can I organize all my different supplies?
Well, one of the first things is I'd ask Debbie, do you have another space so that you can split that up and not have a multi-purpose room? And that may not be possible, which is why she's combined them. But if it is possible, Debbie, the first thing I would do is have a defined space for each of those, because it may be a mess, your words, because maybe there was just too much stuff in a finite amount of space and it just doesn't fit in that box. If not, I would figure out ways to separate them a little more efficiently, assuming that they are infiltrating into the other space, and that might be why it feels messy to you. So maybe putting up dividers even in the room, and you can come up with a pretty divider if that's something that's aesthetically pleasing. But here's the thing, and a lot of professional organizers would agree with me, this may not be a system breakdown, this may be a behavioral human breakdown, meaning that it may be a mess because you haven't truly set up a system that you can maintain. So I would start from scratch, and I would go through the process of looking at that space, figuring out, does everything that's in there need to be in there? Does everything in there have a home? Does the home make sense in terms of the system? And can it be easily maintained? And if not, then she needs to actually go through the organizing process in that room with each piece of item and with each zone in that room, and then and only then can she truly maintain it. So I don't know, not knowing, looking at the space, I don't know if the mess is human breakdown or system breakdown, but 85% of the time it's usually a human breakdown. So I would ask yourself, why can't you maintain that space, and how can we make it easier for you to do so?
Awesome. Kim, the next question is for you. It's about calendars, and I know you deal with this a lot. We've had a conversation about it before, but someone's asking about they used to keep their work and their personal calendar separate. What's your advice on that? How do you recommend someone going about either having their calendars together or separate?
You know, it's really funny that you asked me that question, because I used to keep 2 calendars, and even in the early days of electronic calendars, I had 2 different devices. I had a work device and I had a personal device, and I kept 2 calendars, and someone challenged me to keep 1, because what was happening is I would commit to something on one, and then I would have to go reference the other one, and it was a lot of back and forth, and there would be things that I would be double booking on, or things that I would miss because I wasn't checking both places. So my recommendation is, whether you're using a paper calendar or you're using an electronic calendar, and the electronic calendars nowadays allow you to layer calendars, so you might have a work calendar that's through your business, but then you can also layer your personal calendar on top, and your business folks won't be able to see your personal calendar. So you're able to check things in both places and prevent overbooking or missed events or anything like that. But I would strongly recommend 1. It was a good challenge for me, because someone said to me, I challenge you, I'll give you 3 months. And because it was sort of a game, and I was like, well, I guess I'll see if I can do it. And I did it, and I never gone back.
That's great. Lisa, a question for you about how often should we purge our file drawer? Get rid of the files that we shouldn't necessarily hold on to.
I'm going to give you a typical lawyer answer. It depends. Because it really does depend. So, something like your insurance policy, I would only purge the old one when the new one arrives. Whereas something else you might not purge ever, like your will. So I'd say vital documents probably need to be purged a lot less, whereas documents that are like a 1 in and 1 out, like when you get the next month of something, you might not need the old month. But I'm also going to challenge people that 80% of all that paper doesn't need to be kept at all. So I'd say that you should actually purge your files now and probably never have them again, because you probably don't need as much paper as you think you do. And again, much of that can be found online or can be scanned. So I would ask yourself an important question when you open every file. Can this be found somewhere else or be repurposed into digital format? And that hopefully will help you whittle down your papers to begin with.
All right. Ramona, we're going to answer a question here from Lynn. It says, I used to be relatively organized but experienced an acute health issue for 2 years. I'm ready to dig back in, but I'm completely overwhelmed with the backlog. So what's the best way to start, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, and I understand that it's hard when you have, a life event that throws you off track trying to get back again. The thing that you have to remember is you're not going to do it all overnight. I mean, you had an extended period that you were kind of away from being organized, and it's going to take a little while to get back. So my first advice is always be really, really patient with yourself. Sit down and look at the areas of your life that need to be organized. Maybe you've got a paper backlog Maybe you've got a bunch of clothes and junk in closets that, you know, don't serve a purpose in your life anymore or are not relevant to how you live these days. Maybe you've got, you know, a lot of correspondence to get caught on, whatever, you know, whatever it is that you need to get in order. Kind of sit down and create your little list, because I love my lists, and put things in relevance in order in terms of what's the most painful thing going on in your life right now, the thing that's just the thorn in your side, the pain in your neck, you cannot stand it anymore, you need to get that fixed. Well, that's the top of your list. And the next most irritating thing goes next, and work your way down to create priorities like that. And then just set aside, like I said before, pick a day and set aside some time to tackle just that first thing on your list. Maybe it's the paper. Maybe it's all the paper on your desk. So sit down and go through the pile, and for each item say, what do I need to do with this? Does it serve a purpose? If it does, great. Put it over here. This is your rough sort. And then we'll worry about going through and setting up categories and getting all of that, you know, detail-oriented work done later. Just clean out the trash to start out with. Then you can come back another day and sit down and go through your paper and actually get it in the files where it belongs. But don't try and do everything at once.
Great. All right, well, this one comes from Jamie. I'm going to give it to each of you guys to answer. We'll start with you, Ramona, and then we'll work our way down the slide strip there. But what is the most recent book, fiction or nonfiction, that you've read?
Oh, man. I just was reading something the other day. I hate to tell you this because it's not relevant to organizing, nor is it relevant to business. It's Stiff, The Interesting Life of Human Cadavers. It's a fascinating book, actually. It's all about the things that happen to us after we die.
Only with you, Ramona. Only with you. Lisa, how about you?
I just finished reading a great book called A Year in the World by Frances Mays. She wrote Under the Tuscan Sun. I love travel. I love culture. I'm taking Italian language right now, and I'm going to be going back to Italy this late summer. So it was a personal book, and I loved it. And I also just started the book Wild, the book that's out in the movies right now, because I love books about personal journeys and transformations. So I thought that would be interesting. So they're both personal. But I do a lot of reading, but I do a lot of business reading, and my New Year's resolution for this year was to go back to personal reading, because every book I picked up in the last 3 years was business, and so I'm sticking to that New Year's resolution so far.
Can you give us like 1 or 2 lines of Italian just for fun?
Oh, sure. Me chiamo Lisa. Mi famiglia sud italiano. So my name is Lisa. My family is from the south of Italy. So. Okay,
all right. That was we just had to widen the audience's perspective a little bit here. Okay, Kim, what's the latest book you've read?
The latest book that I've been reading is called Startup Nation. It's an entrepreneurial business book. It's about the state of Israel and how many entrepreneurs and startups come from the state of Israel because of its size and having enemies on all sides. So it talks about how the risk that entrepreneurs in the state of Israel take because they're basically forced to because that's their lifestyle, and how many are tremendously successful. I think the stat was there was more successful startups in Israel than in any other country, and it's only the size of New Jersey, the whole country.
Wow. That's great. All right, well, we'll get back to organizing questions here. In fact, Kim, we'll just stay with you. Jay is a graduate student, and he or she, I guess it's a Jay, it's a she, because he says also a mother trying to find the best way to initiate organization at home in a small space, a 2-bedroom apartment, and kind of lost where to start because of all the stuff going on. A similar overwhelming question of how to get started, but particularly in a small space. What's some organizing tips for small spaces?
Right, and I believe you said a mother, so there's children involved. So children involved always can sometimes put that wrench in your plan, because you can set up a system and then they can destroy it very quickly. So I think the key is in any space, where do you get started? I always suggest, like Ramona was saying, like you get started in a not expect to kill it all in one day. Like you're definitely not going to be able to tackle the whole thing in one day. So I say take a small bite and like schedule a timer for like 15-20 minutes, or if you like music, put on some music for like 4 or 5 songs and tackle whatever it is that's bothering you most. Whatever that is, just go for it, whether it's a drawer, whether it's a shelf, whether it's the floor, whether it's just the shoes of your closet, whatever it is, just set your timer for 15 minutes and concentrate on that, because what we find is that the more we, put ourselves all over the place, the less we feel like we've made any success and any progress. So if we just focus on doing it for 15 minutes, we tend to get like some inertia, and next thing we know, we've been doing it for an hour, but that finite amount of time of 15 minutes, you know that there's a beginning and you know that there's an end, so you have less feeling of overwhelm.
Well, Ramona, you have a small space as well, but this next question from Rhonda is kind of like that. She had a mother who moved in with her, and a daughter and a granddaughter moved in, and said, we're so crowded, how can I seem to get things organized? And it sounds like maybe from your social work background too, you understand the dynamics of this when you have a lot of people in a smaller space.
Sure, and yes, I am in a small space. I live in a 29-foot Airstream travel trailer, so I work and live and exist in less than 200 square feet. I do know some people in New York that have less than that, though. But yeah, when you've got people that are coming in and combining houses, I think one of the most important things to do first is to take a look at what everyone is bringing with them, because a lot of times you have duplication. You know, this happens when people move in together, they get married, you know, you have roommates, that sort of thing. You might have multiples of different items that one person owned this and the other person also owns it, now you have two. There could be some cleaning out that could happen that way. Another thing that I find in small spaces is you have to be a little creative about where your storage is. You may not be able to just go with the basic stuff that they give you, the closets and cabinets and drawers and those kinds of things. You might need to look for places where you've got some hidden storage. Can you create some storage under the bed or behind a door or hanging on the wall in a closet? Can you create some layered storage sometimes? You know, occasionally you've got to have things that you use up close, and then you could have things that you're getting at less often, a little further away, maybe possibly behind something else. I hate to tell people that, but in a tiny space, you know, you may not have a choice. But just look around and see where you can creatively use some wasted storage area and put some kind of an organizer in there. You might actually find that you have more space than you think you do.
Right. Great. We are just want to remind people that if you do have a question for us to take live, there's a chat box over on the side. Go ahead and just enter that question in right now, and we will we'll take them as many as we can during the hour. Lisa, I'm going to go to you now and want to ask you about, this one is about what's the best way to organize or label files, like category names, alphabetical. What's the best way to do it?
That's a great question.
Don't say it depends.
No, I won't. I'm not a big fan of alphabetical, except if it's within a category. So I tend to tell people to use a categorical naming system. So, like, I wouldn't want a file named Jones, which is the name of Let's Pretend a Client, next to a file that has to do with, like, my marketing plan, because those have nothing to do with each other. So I would say first think in categories. So again, for a business, the categories might be administrative or operations, marketing, client care, customer service, you know, etc. And then within those actual categories, then it makes sense, let's say, to alphabetize. But even the categories can change so much per person. So it depends on the way your brain thinks. So I would tell people that that's one thing in terms of naming categories, is go with what comes first, because, you know, you open a drawer and you might not have looked at that category for months. You want to remember, like, instinctively, what would I have named that? Another thing about naming files and actual labels is I tend to use what's called straight line filing within a category. So if I'm opening a drawer, I want to see, like, all of the marketing, I want to see all the little labels on the left. When it switches, let's say, to the middle, it's because it denotes switching a category. So now that moved on to operations, for example. And, like, industrial psychologists have studied this for years, that when you have zigzag files, your brain goes, ah! But, you know, when you can see, like, nice, clean lines, and then you see a difference in the lines, it's because your brain notices that a category has switched. So it's something that a lot of organizers use, but the general public hasn't caught on to that yet. And a lot of people buy a file box, and it's like left, middle, right, and that's how they set up their filing system. And then when they go to open it, it's chaotic. So if you don't have a straight line filing system, I'd say to switch to that and just watch your little brain go, ah.
That's great. We also have some articles at smead.com/orgonomics, which is our orgonomics blog. It has lots of articles about just what you're talking about, straight line filing. So, Kim, we're going to go to you with this question from Mark. He says, I own my own business and am the only employee for the last 9 years. I'm overwhelmed with all my stuff and tempted to just purge, most of it, but I have the same issue at home, not enough time, too much stuff. And so any advice you have on how do you get started, getting a sense of accomplishment, getting something, done?
I'm assuming that Mark is talking about papers because you said he's a business owner. Yep. And he's the sole employee. But there are scanning services for folks that want to get rid of paper that don't have the time to set up their own scanning system. So there are different scanning services that you can mail your information away, your documents away, or your receipts away, and they will scan them, and they will put them in a system for you. The IRS has accepted scanned receipts, I believe, since 1997. So this is not something that they're new and just trying out. So people should feel comfortable that if they scan things, the biggest key about having scanned anything, whether it's documents, receipts, financials, pictures, whatever it is to have a backup system. So as long as you have a backup system for whatever it is that you're scanning, you can feel safely comfortable purging the documentation. And like Lisa was saying earlier, is you don't, as long as you have a category or a system that is set up. For my business, I like to have things set up in the categories of the 1040 and of the Schedule C for the business. So I have file folders that I keep some paper in, and then I also have electronic file folders. And in these electronic file folders, they're named under the tax categories that the IRS sets up so that it's easy for me to find when I need it. And, heaven forbid there should be an audit, I know exactly where to go and provide that documentation.
I'm going to stay with you, Kim, because this is kind of a follow-up to that. How long should you keep the bills that have been paid? Also, is there a difference between like a scanned copy of a receipt and the real receipt?
That's where it gets a little tricky now. How long should things be kept? Well, I'm going to use a answer that Lisa would probably gave you as a legal answer is check with your accountant. Mm-hmm. So they are the authority on that, and I would check with your accountant as to how long they want you to keep the different pieces of documentation. The second question you asked was, I'm sorry,
well, it was about the difference between a scanned receipt and a physical receipt.
Yeah, so that's where it's a little tricky because some retail stores want you to bring in the original receipt, and now some stores, when you go into them, when you go to pay, they say, do you want us to email you the receipt? And they don't even give you a paper receipt. So I'm guessing now with most retailers that if you have some form of a receipt, whether it's a scanned printout of a receipt or it's the actual emailed receipt, that they would accept them. But I've only seen the question at the register within the past year of, do you want us to email you the receipt? Yeah. And some people are like, yeah, sure. Like you're not quite sure because you've never been posed that question before, and sort of what does that mean in terms of returns?
Right. Lisa, since you're kind of the legal person, yeah, I know you have, but I'm going to also ask Ron's question, which I think is going to come on in this. It says, in the new age of technology, do you suggest paperless, scan and electronically save, or hard copy your files, or both? And so I think that's kind of what you were going to get on, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Kim said about asking your accountant. So when people ask, a professional organizer, how long should I keep something? I would say Kim is giving you great advice, but there's more people to check with. So I ask the client, are there certain triggers? So is this paperwork financial, legal, or tax, or is it confidential, medical? So there's like so many triggers that we need to think about in terms of, I would always ask the client, what does this paper link to, like the bigger picture? So if this paper is the only copy of the adoption certificate for your child, I would not get rid of that paper. I'd keep it forever. So I actually help clients first look at the indefinitely, like what paper do you need forever, either in hard copy or in a digital form. And then you go down from there. What paperwork actually connects to a tax return? And then, of course, it needs to be kept at least as long as a tax return is kept. And I would tell my clients to keep that supporting paper with the tax return, just like Kim said, in case of an audit. And then there's the paper that, like someone asked, how long do I need to keep a receipt or a bill? Well, if you don't have a business and you're the average W-2 employee and you don't need to keep your gas receipts or your food receipts, and a lot of people go, really? I thought I did. Well, unless it connects to a business deduction on your taxes, like you're running a catering company, then we don't need to know that you bought Twinkies last week. So I would tell my clients, you keep a receipt only if it connects to something that's legal, financial, medical, or confidential. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
As far as the second question, how do you keep the paper? Kim brings up a really great point. If you know, like if it says returns can only be done in 90 days and it must be done with the original receipt, well then I would have, as Ramona brought up earlier, a pending file, and I would call it something like, pending receipts or items just purchased, and keep it for a period of time, 30 to 90 days, and then after that I would consider scanning it into a system. But if you know something needs to be kept in hard copy, then I would at least keep it as long as it's pending.
Great. Well, Ramona, we're going to move from those important papers to the super important priceless papers. Jill is asking, I have a young daughter in elementary school who brings home a lot of artwork, pictures, crafts. I've been pretty good about sorting through which ones to keep and which ones not to. Some I've displayed, but others I'd like to store. What's kind of the best way to store these mementos?
Well, I have clients that use a lot of different systems for that, and really there's no like one perfect system for everybody because it depends on how you like to access this stuff. I have some people who are extremely detail-oriented and prepared to invest the time to actually put their children's artwork in scrapbooks and photo albums and, things like that where you can actually flip through them. And I say, God bless you if you can do that. Now, most of my people are not going to take that time. They just don't have it. So what a lot of my clients end up doing is we get archival quality storage boxes. And that's the thing, even with people think of this for photos, but it's true even for other paperwork. You don't want to be putting that kind of stuff in, say, just like a plastic tub, because plastic is made of petroleum. It off-gases over time. It will destroy your mementos. So get an archival quality, which generally is a kind of more like a paperish kind of a box, like a cardboardy feeling box, an archival quality box. And for a lot of my kids, we will set up a box for each year, each school year, and the schoolwork, hey, you got an A on this paper, this was the report you turned in, here's your artwork, whatever, for that year will go in that box, and it's labeled saying, this is Sandy's box for 1998. Wow, I'm dating myself. What are we in, 2015? Jesus. But yeah, so then you have one of those for each of the years that your kid is in school, and at some point you can either farm them off with them when they leave home. They can go through them and clean out and pick out the stuff they want. You can pick some things out, but it's easy to remember what year things came from. I kind of love that. It's super simple. It's not requiring of a lot of gadgetry, and it's really easy for anybody to do.
Kim, Susan asked a question about tax records, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. But the best way to get all your documents kind of ready for tax season, we're coming up to that dreaded April 15th. What are some advice you have on tax tips?
Like I said earlier, I think the best way to deal with taxes is to set up your records as it is put into the 1040. So if you have to submit a Schedule A, if there's education expenses, medical expenses, Schedule C, if you're running a business, that you have folders set up if you're a paper person, or electronic folders if you're a paperless person, but set up on those categories so that when you, rather than having just, like Lisa was saying, if you just do an A to Z file and all the A things, then you're having to sort through all the A things. So if you have it set up based on those tax categories, it's really easy. And now as we're approaching, we have basically a month from the end of this week till we have to have our deadline. So get that set up now for 2015, sorry. So when it comes 2016, you already have a system and you're not having to go back through all your documents and start over trying to sort them through. So as things come in, you make a donation, you drop off at Goodwill or another charity, you drop that receipt in right then, and that way when you go to do your taxes next year, you just grab your folders and everything's all ready for you. Or your electronic folder, you open it up and there everything is.
Ramona, do you have any advice on collecting papers for taxes, or storing or organizing and getting ready for the tax season?
No, I absolutely love that system. That's what I do with my clients. We have, categories set up based on the type of deduction or the type of expense that they're having to prove. I think the one thing that people just need to be clear about is when do they need to have a receipt? When do they need to have more than just a receipt? Especially with donations. So a lot of times, when organizers are working with folks to clean things out, we're taking their donates for them and dropping them off and getting them a receipt. but people are not always really clear on what's required. There are certain dollar levels that the amount of the donation that require you to have different documentation, and you get into some instances where you actually have to have, appraisals or proof of what the item was worth, because it's more than you just saying, yeah, I dropped all this stuff off and it was worth, $2,000. So check with your accountant and get really clear about what kind of documentation you need to have for each level of donation, especially if you're working with an organizer and doing cleaning out and getting them to take things for you, just so you make sure you're getting the right paperwork for what you need for your deduction.
Awesome. Hey, Lisa, we have a question from Debbie about someone who has tight finances. And I know all of you guys are involved with NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers, but if someone can't hire necessarily a professional organizer or is on a super limited budget, what's the best way for them to get help if they don't feel they can do it themselves?
That's a good question. So there are several ways that they can, you just said they can't do it themselves. One is they could do a buddy system. So they can connect with a friend or family member or someone in the community and say, what I really need is someone to be with me to go through these items, and then they can do like a little friends barter. So they can say, like, hey, let's go through your clothes and then my clothes. Let's go through your papers and my papers. Let's go through your garage and my garage. They can make it like a community event to get together with a group of friends or family. I've actually seen people do like, come help us clear out our garage for the spring, and bring food, and we'll all watch a movie afterwards. And I'm amazed that people are lovely, and they actually go help each other do this. In terms of like, the blind leading the blind, though, they may want to access some wonderful free services or free resources out there. So, go on and look at, how to categorize, how to put like with like, and so there's lots of wonderful free organizing advice out there. You can sign up for, half the organizers in the country have an amazing newsletter or blog. So, if you need sort of a how-to, you could do that, and then you can connect with a friend or family member and actually buddy up with someone, and it could actually be a lot of fun.
That's great. I think one of our podcasts, someone talked about the University of YouTube, where you can pretty much find anything you need on YouTube, correct?
That's true. Actually, good point. You can watch a video. So that's a really good point. You can, and you have to be the type of person, though, that can learn like that and process like that, and then take what you've learned and apply it to your actual system. And sometimes people can't do that, and that's where the advice of a professional can come in, because if you're so overwhelmed that all you see is the clutter and you don't have the vision for what it could be like and how to set up a system, then that's when you may actually need to upgrade and hire an organizer. But even organizers sometimes have lower priced service offerings. So they may be doing a teleclass for 15, 20 bucks that gives some good advice. They may have some audio recordings. They may have a book out there. So that's something to think about, is you may not even need to hire someone for long-term hands-on organizing.
Those are great ideas. Ramona, anything additional on that? If someone doesn't have the finances to maybe hire a professional organizer or is on a tight budget?
Well, the thing that I was going to say is a lot of people think that hiring an organizer means hiring an organizer to come in and do all of the work for them, to come in and physically set up this storage spaces and do cleaning out and all of that. And that is what a lot of organizers do, because that's what clients need. But a lot of organizers are also happy to come in and do an assessment for you, a paid assessment, where they give you a report and they say, for each of your areas of your life, these are the steps that I would recommend, these are the tools that I would recommend, and then you can take that and go off and do it yourself. I know I do this for clients all the time. I mean, it kind of, with my way of functioning being on the road, it works better because I can give someone my expertise, and then they can go off and do the manual labor. So try and find yourself an organizer who could do that for you, and that'll end up costing you a whole lot less, but you'll still have the expertise and the advice to kind of go off of, and you're not flying blind.
Okay, I'm going to give you this question, Kim, and ask everybody else the same. Susan's asking, what are the top resources you recommend? So I'm thinking on these, kind of on the train of thought we've had here as far as learning how to get started, get organized. What are some of the top resources you like to recommend?
If you are someone who can't do it on your own and you do need hand-holding or body doubling or someone who is an outside party to help you get started and get going and develop a system, someone who has an outside perspective, there is, like you mentioned, the National Association of Professional Organizers. And there are members that are worldwide. So it's at napo.net, and they have a toolbox that says, find an organizer. And so you can click on what your services you need, as well as your zip code or the country that you're in, and it'll show you organizers in your area. So that's one way. But they also have a blog where you can get tips, and they share tips from all their different members that are profiled. So you can find different places where you can find organizers that will provide you free advice through their blogs, as well as have, like Lisa was saying, like courses and that type of stuff to really help you get out there and get started and bite off small bits so that you can handle it on your own. Or, of course, if it's in your budget. And that's the key thing is, what you say, like someone can't afford an organizer. If you're so stuck, it may be worth an initial investment, like Ramona was saying, to get someone in there to give you a consultation, to get you that boost, to get you started, to say, here's where you get started. So it may not be a huge financial investment, but that amount that you're paying pays off in true dividends, because then you are able to move forward and to continue to progress.
And Lisa, you work with a lot of new organizers. Is there like an apprentice program where maybe someone who's just starting in the organizing business would be really happy to help someone who doesn't have a lot of money because they want to get going? Or what advice do you give to someone who's starting a new organizing business to get new clients based on the fact that they haven't had any?
Yeah, that's a great question. There isn't an official apprenticeship program. I mean, NAPO does have a wonderful program of coursework, so a new organizer can take what we call PO classes, and that's how they will study, or they study under the tutelage of a certified professional organizer or a veteran organizer. But many organizers, when they first set up shop, they may have taken some basic coursework, but at some point they need to go out there and work with clients. And so a client may want to consider looking at a newbie organizer who maybe their rates are maybe more on par with what that limited budget is at this time. There are also some organizers that work under organizing firms, so they come in as an employee or an independent contractor of the company, but again, they may be on a lower rate scale so that they may be more affordable to a client. And then again, many organizers now have programs, like online programs that you can purchase that will we either call them self-study or home study programs that you can walk yourself through if you have that discipline. Because a lot of people buy programs, John, and we see that they still don't get organized. And so, just as Kim said, if I see someone, if I'm doing, a consultation with someone on the phone and they say, honestly, I bought all the books, right? You guys, don't we see this all the time? I bought all the books, I bought all the home study programs, but the problem is I'm still on a budget. I say, but you wasted all that money. What you really need to do is hire someone, just like Ramona said, to do a targeted, detailed, consultative assessment so that you can once and for all really tackle this. But yeah, junior organizers, new organizers, many of them are hungry and need the business and maybe on a lower rate scale, so that is something to think about.
Ramona, you also work with some new organizers. How do you find them? Do you put something in Craigslist, or what's a way that you find someone who's probably not marketing themselves very well? A newer organizer.
Well, I'm a little leery. Yeah, honestly, I would be a little leery about just hiring some random person on Craigslist without, I'm a word-of-mouth kind of gal. I like for people to be sent to me via a referral, and I always tell my new organizers, it doesn't matter if you're new at this and you only just got started and you really haven't had a lot of clients, get out there and join a networking group where you've got folks that can learn about you, they can learn about what a good client looks like for you, about how you do business. They can come to trust you as a business you to their clients. But if you're just for organizing help and you're thinking a newbie organizer might be a good way to go, definitely ask and check into when I'm traveling around the country, I visit a lot of different assistant programs, and it's a situation where you've got new organizers who are starting out. They will go out and assist on a job with a veteran organizer. So let's say it's a really big job and it's more than one person can handle. They might bring a handful of assistants in, but they're only making a much reduced rate. So the cost of having those assistants come in is a lot less than the cost of having the veteran organizer. Sometimes you can do something like that and get a whole lot more bang for your buck, because you're still getting the person who knows what they're doing and is in charge, but you're getting a whole lot of little minions too that are costing a lot less, and they're learning while they're doing sort of the grunt work. Great.
Well, we're going to we're almost out of time here. We got maybe about 10 minutes. Just to remind people again, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, and we're going to go over to Kim now. And Kim, I want to ask you about kind of maybe a client you're working with in the last week or two, the most interesting organizing challenge that you've run into in the last couple weeks.
let's think about that. I mean, I would say right now, most of my clients right now, not surprisingly, are dealing with taxes because it's just that time of year. So I would say the most unique challenge I've had is when you've had a change in status for your taxes, how things are a little different. So, for example, one client that I'm working with, one of the spouse passed away in the past year. So that changes everything because their whole tax profile has changed. You know, their income has changed, their expenses have changed. There's just been a whole different status change. So I would say, you know, for me, that was new compared to just, not that there's ever a run-of-the-mill tax situation, but a typical tax situation. So it's been sort of a learning experience for me.
Great. Lisa, how about you? Any interesting challenges in the last couple of weeks that are good stories for TV?
Yeah, I'd say transitions, like major transitions. And I don't think, I mean, hopefully people realize this, but transitions cause disorganization. And they're usually transitional disorganization or situational, but it's amazing to watch how life transitions really affect people's mental and physical disorganization. So, you know, one of my clients is changing jobs. Another one of my clients is launching a business. One of my clients is going through a divorce, and I've noticed this pattern that they're all different transitions, but the way they manifest is always sort of like just pushing them slightly off their game, and for that period of time, they get that sense of I'm behind the 8 ball with my task management, my project management, time management, but also my stuff, because situationally things are changing. So that's been sort of interesting to watch, that, you know, very different transitions, but they always sort of manifest in some type of disorganization.
Ramona, how about you? Have you had any interesting challenges in the last couple of weeks with clients?
Well, it's kind of fun. Since I landed in Los Angeles, you know, I'm around all of the Hollywood people, and I kind of love them. It's funny. People think that this town is plastic and fake, and it's really not. There are so many amazing people here that are engaged in all kinds of creative activities, and every last one of them is disorganized and cluttered. So I have a client who is big in the costuming world, like they do the rent, which I love. If you people ever see me, I have like an insane number of costumes in this Airstream, but they do the Ren fairs and the Edwardian ball and all these kind of things, and lo and behold, they need some help organizing that. I have a client who makes jewelry and has all the little crafty artsy things that need to be in order. I've got another one that's a painter. So it's kind of cool that I'm getting to work a lot more out here with the creative side, because people have this really, really wrong idea that creative and logical don't go together, that you are either left brain or right brain, and it's a bunch of crap. You are whole brained. You need the whole brain for both sides, and it's about teaching people to sort of integrate the two together, and I love that.
Great. Kim, I'm going to remind the audience that we're almost done here, so if you have a question, folks, put it in now, because we're going to be wrapping up really soon. Terry's asking this question about organizing papers. This is really a good one. Do you sort first and then purge, or purge first and then sort?
That is a very good question. My feeling is you purge as you are sorting. So one of your purge categories is trash. You know, one of your sort categories, sorry, is trash. So, you know, basically, like Ramona was saying, is it an action file, is it a reference or an archive file, or is it trash? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a separate process. It's part of that sort process, is to get rid of as much as you no longer need to hold on to.
Okay, great. Well, listen, we're going to, I'm going to start wrapping it up here, because I want to give each of you an opportunity. I'm going to start with Ramona to talk about your business and give your contact information, what kinds of clients you work with, and how people can get a hold of your website. You let us know how we can contact you. So, Ramona, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, you know, like I said, I'm on the road part of the year. I'm parked in one place part of the year. So if I'm in an area where clients need help, I'm more than happy to do the hands-on. I do a great deal of virtual organizing and phone coaching and those kinds of things. And I have a very holistic attitude about what getting organized means. Again, because I come from the social work background, I think it means things like finances in order and getting rid of toxic relationships and things waste your energy and sort of suck the life out of you. So I go lots of different directions with my clients. Anyone that wants to talk to me, I'm always happy to offer free advice. You can reach me at ramonacreel.com. And yeah, I'm happy to talk with anyone about, you know, working with them wherever they are in the world, honestly.
Great. Lisa, we'll go to you next. What are you up to? What kinds of clients are you working with, and how do people get a hold of you?
So I work with individuals virtually. I do phone, Skype, Google Hangout, so video and phone sessions around the world, and I love that. And I help them with productivity consulting, but as Ramona said, it's sort of holistic because, you know, they may think it's a time management issue, but there's maybe some other things going on also. And I have short-term clients that might just, you know, call me for a session or two, and then long-term clients that spend months with me. And then I do a lot of organizational consulting and speaking. So a lot of nonprofits, government agencies, law firms. So if any of you out there work for an organization and you realize, boy, we could use a productivity expert, give me a call. You can find me at lisamontanero.com. And I also offer a lot of online programs for people that are do-it-yourselfers or are on a budget. And lastly, I have an online university called lmguniversity.com, and that offers courses to help people improve their business life and career. So, yeah, lots of cool stuff. That's my hub, and you could pretty much find me anywhere on social media as Lisa Montanero. So there you go.
Great. And Kim, how can we get a hold of you? What kinds of clients are you working with? And basically contact information.
I am working with a lot of entrepreneurial clients, small businesses as well. So a lot of people that used to work for large corporations and are now working from home. So, you know, that whole going to an office and having an office structure, that changes when you bring the business home. And so I help them transition to the home-based business, the home-based entrepreneur, as well as small businesses, and help with processes and workflows and using the technology that we are being thrown at us in every direction to our advantage. So rather than being a distraction, I help business owners take that technology and say, how can we make it work for us, and how can we become more profitable by using the technology that's being thrown at us? Because there's really some amazing things that are happening with technology. It's just very hard to keep up and implement it. So I'm doing a lot of that. My blog is needanotheryou.com, and that has all my contact information. I tweet very often and rapidly it's at Kim Oser, just like my name, and I'm on all the different social media profiles. So I can't wait to connect with everyone.
Great. Well, this has been a phenomenal time. Just the hour went by really quick. So for those that had asked earlier, we are going to offer a replay. It's basically on the same page you signed up for, which is sme.com/hangout. And that'll probably be available within a day of this broadcast. So look for that. And I want to thank all of you guys for just a great action-packed session here. And we will, if you have any questions on social media too, you can use the hashtag Organizer411, and we'll be all lurking around that. And if you have any questions, we can follow up with you on it. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And we will see you again on another one. You can also participate in SMED's weekly podcast. You can find out more information about that. It's both audio and video, and that's at sme.com/podcast. So until next time, we want to help you keep organized.